Greetings and welcome back to Pseudo's journey through the Japanese air tech tree in War Thunder, a series of subpar guides made for unskilled free-to-play players by an unskilled free-to-play player. This spectacularly snazzy day, we shall be looking at two of the more unique, albeit not great at their roles, strike aircraft in the Japanese air tech tree, the D4Y1 and D4Y2. These quick dive bombers can be found folded together at battle ratings 2.0 and 2.3 respectively in rank 2 in the 4th line of the Japanese air tech tree. The reason why I call these planes quite unique for the tree is that they're actually fairly fast. They carry very light ordnance and armaments, but they were an interesting, although not incredibly successful, attempt by Imperial Japan to match the speed and power of the Allied fighters. However, due to this being a rather novel concept for the Japanese during this time period, it led to some quite prominent pros and cons in the designs of these aircraft. As this is a two-plane special, we'll follow my usual formula for these. We'll look at the shared characteristics of each of these planes, then we'll talk about both of them separately and their unique details, and then we'll wrap it up with the finances, modifications, and conclusion. To start off with the performance of the D4Ys, they perform the best at medium to high speeds, usually around the 400 to 450 km per hour region. Their turn rate at those higher speeds is really quite fantastic, and you can pull some absolutely amazing maneuvers which you don't expect to be able to. Both your horizontal and vertical turn is relatively good. I actually do a bit of a diagonal move quite frequently in these planes, crossing a typical horizontal turn with a high yo-yo. It feels very natural in the D4Ys and allows you to get on an opponent's tail very quickly when used in the right situation. As noted, once your energy bleeds down though, you don't turn as well. You don't turn badly, still being able to match many other fighters, but there will be a noticeable difference once you bleed down to sub 350 km per hour. On that note, let's talk about one of the more major issues with the performance of the D4Ys, their energy bleed. While they have great turn performance at medium to high speeds, they bleed that energy very quickly. You can usually get 2 very solid turns out of them before they drain their speed down to low levels. As you don't perform as well at a lower speed, you have to be very cautious of this in a dogfight. Even if you go into the fight with an abundance of speed and energy, always go in with the mindset that you'll only have 1 or 2 very good moves to gain the best possible position against your enemy before your energy is drained down to fairly low speeds and you lose that amazing maneuverability. The rudder and roll performance on the D4Ys aren't spectacular. The roll rate especially can be very slow, and if you are not constantly giving rudder inputs in conjunction with it, the incredibly slow roll rate can make it quite difficult to line up shots. Always be thinking a good bit ahead and aiming for where the enemy is going and not where they are. The real crown jewel of the D4Ys are their fantastic engines. This is one point where the two aircraft differ by a decent amount, so we'll cover the specifics in a later section covering each separate aircraft. In general, these are very good engines for the Japanese air tech tree. These are actually the same engines as in the BF-109s, and you can feel it. For pretty much the first time in an aircraft this small in the tech tree, you can actually outrun a lot of the US and German players in a straight line. You have okay acceleration and overall very solid top speeds. A very cautionary note though, these engines burn out incredibly quickly. If you use WEP for more than a few minutes in each match, your engine will cook itself and burn out. I actually recommend not using WEP to climb initially in the match and just save your engine for prolonged dogfights. I've had my fair share of matches where I haven't done this, gotten into extended fights where I'm laying on the WEP and ended up crashing when my engine dies due to overheating. The heat buildup is no joke, so be very, very cautious of it in these planes. The incredible engine also leads to great dive performance. Even in a shallow dive, you can pick up a lot of speed in the D4Ys, easily gain up past 600 km per hour in a shallow dive and above 700 in a steeper one. This is helped by the fact that your wings don't undergo mitotic division from the plane until about 750 km per hour IAS. Interestingly, I found that you don't actually lock up that much until about 650 km per hour. This means that you can go into some pretty steep dives and have good maneuverability compared to many other planes. Go too much faster than that though and you will really start to feel sluggish. In the quite literal opposite direction, the climb rate is fairly okay. The good engine definitely helps in this metric. However, possibly the biggest perk that the D4Ys get is that they have a full bomber air spawn in air battles. To put it bluntly, you can climb way, way higher than absolutely everyone else. If you choose to climb well right after spawn, there's effectively nobody who could catch you. Overall, these are very decently performing planes. Between quite exceptional engines for the Japanese air tech tree, quite respectable medium speed turn performance, and still fairly decent low speed performance, excellent dive and climb performance, these are a beast of an aircraft. They do of course have the issues with engine cooling, roll rate, and energy bleed, but these are all problems that can be solved through good piloting. However, you all have played the Japanese air tech tree by now. You've even reached rank 2. You know that there is always a catch. That catch is quite a major one, and one that we as Japanese players all dread. One that causes us to toss and turn in our sleep at night. For primary armaments, both of the D4Ys sport two 7.7mm Type 97 machine guns. For anyone who somehow doesn't know yet, these are likely the single worst guns in the entire game in terms of per bullet damage. They have very low muzzle velocity and hit about as hard as a pencil eraser chucked by a kindergartner. To say that these MGs are weak is an understatement. I am not joking in the slightest when I say that it takes hundreds and hundreds of direct hits to take an enemy fighter down with these. As an example to you, one time in this plane, I dumped several hundred rounds directly into the enemy's fuselage and eventually got a severe damage before running out of ammo. However, they continued to fly perfectly normal. They just kept flying in a straight line and only crashed after I rammed them. I am fairly sure that what caused the severe damage on them was not that their plane took any appreciable damage to any of its systems after those hundreds of rounds, but rather that the sheer weight of lead added to their plane by all the bullets stuck in their fuselage rendered their plane unable to generate enough lift due to all the added weight. These guns were absolutely abysmal at reserve tiers. Up at 2.0 or heavens forbid 3.0 in a full up tier, they can hardly even be considered weapons. This also means that you can't take down bombers. You are as flimsy and flammable as any other Japanese plane, so bombers at this rank will kill you before you can kill them. As tempting as it can be due to being higher up than all the enemy bombers, don't try it. It will not go well for you. The only way to get good consistent kills with these guns is pilot sniping, so you'd better hope that you have some really good aim if you want to be doing successfully at air-to-air combat. As for ammo belts, both the D4Ys get the same selection. As the damage is so pitiful no matter the belt, just take the default belts. Not really worth wasting SL on any of the other ones. The D4Ys also both get a rear gunner on the top of the tail of the plane. This gunner sadly also only gets a single 7.7mm Type 97 machine gun. This gunner actually has a very good field of fire, being able to turn a full 90 degrees to either side as well as upwards, but this gun's damage is just as useless as the forward guns. It gets several belts as well, of which I typically take either the Armored Targets belt if I want to live in a fantasy land and pretend like that will increase its damage, or more realistically, I'd take the APT belts as they have more tracers. The tracers aren't anything special, they'll just make the enemy a bit more hesitant to chase right behind you and might cause them to peel off if you're lucky. Ordnance loads of the D4Ys are obviously very important as these are dive bombers, not fighters. However, they are different enough to warrant getting put into the variant-specific sections later on in the video. For mechanization, the D4Ys get landing, takeoff, and combat flaps. Combat flaps are very notable, as they don't rip until a little over 450 km per hour and do allow you to pull up a little harder. The typical warning that your energy bleed is already fairly bad, so you need to be careful with their usage. More interestingly, I believe that the D4Ys are also the first aircraft in the tech tree to get air brakes. These are very nice if you need to slow down to line up a bomb drop. However, do remember that they do in fact do just that, slow you down. Don't use them if there's an enemy with way more energy approaching you. Both of the D4Ys also get an optical bomb sight, which is always nice for accurate CAS. The takeoffs and landings are very simple and very quick. Nothing special to note except that they can be a bit bouncy on the runway and have a tendency to not get their tail down during landings. They have an arrestor hook that can do carrier landings, so be careful about that. I've occasionally not been able to get the rear wheel down in time and missed catching the cables on the carrier because of it. Use that magnificent air brake to slow down if needed. The visuals of the D4Ys are almost identical, with the only difference being the coloration of their propellers. Overall, they're not bad looking planes, but nothing incredibly unique. They have much straighter and broader wings than most of the Japanese planes of this size. They also have a very noticeable mouth under the engine, which I'm guessing is an air intake of sorts. Overall, not bad looking planes. The cockpits of the D4Ys are also almost identical. Remember, I really never play first person, so this is all a subjective view from somebody who has no idea what they're talking about. They have a decent amount of bracing all around, but in general the sideways, upwards, and forwards visibility are fairly good. There's a bit too much in the way for their rearward visibility to be good. There also is a lot of bracing right by the gun sight directly in front of you, which I'm not a fan of. The gun sight is one of the typical ones used by Japanese dive bombers, what I like to call a grid sight. It works, but isn't my favorite. It still is a far cry better than the abhorrent gun sight of the Kika. Alright, that was actually quite a lot of similarities between the D4Ys. We'll look at the modification and finances towards the end of the video for both of them. But first, let's look at some of the differences, intricacies, and playstyles of each of these models. The D4Y1 is the base model of the D4Y family found at Battle Rating 2.0 in Rank 2 in the 4th line of the Japanese air attack tree as the first plane in its folder. The major differences between the two variants are the engines and the ordnance loads. For the engine, the D4Y1 has an IT Atuta 21 engine, a license-built version of the DB601 engine on the BF109. This engine, as stated earlier, is very strong and can easily match most of the fighters at Battle Rating 2.0. While a bit weaker than the engine on the D4Y2, this engine will serve you well, when it's not overheating after using WEP for 30 seconds, that is. Other major difference between the D4Ys is their bomb loads, a very important metric for any dive bomber. The D4Y1 can carry one 250 kg Navy Type No. 25 Model 2 bomb, one 500 kg Navy Type No. 50 Model 2 bomb, or one 500 kg No. Type 250 Model 1 GP SAP bomb. As you will notice, this is a very limited bomb loadout compared to pretty much any other strike aircraft. Herein lies the other major weakness of the D4Ys apart from their awful forward guns, their pitiful bomb loadout. Even at this battle rating, there are several fighters in other tech trees that can carry more ordnance than this. 250 kg bomb is an acceptable bomb for this tier. It can definitely get some kills against ground targets, but your drops do have to be fairly accurate, and you need the bomb to land within a few meters of the enemy to get a kill. It does a little under 1/2 of a base in damage. The 500 kg bomb is a good bit better at this battle rating, being able to take out an enemy tank even if your aim isn't the best. Overall, you won't feel too many differences between this one and the 250 kg, except that this one isn't as finicky to get kills with. For base damage, it does right around 3/4 of a base, so you should always use it for base bombing in the D4Y1. The 500 kg SAP bomb is a more standard armor-piercing bomb used for naval battles. After playing around with it in some test battles, I found that it actually does fairly decent damage, usually taking about 2 direct hits to down a ship from full health. It has great armor penetration and can frequently make it all the way down to the engine room levels of a ship before detonating, causing some incredibly nice damage on a well-placed hit. I actually did have some issues with it penetrating all the way through the ship before detonating, which is not ideal, but that wasn't too common. The biggest issue is aiming then, as you have to be very close and highly accurate to get a good hit with it. With the naval anti-aircraft being so incredibly broken in War Thunder, as much as I love naval, I can't condone using these planes for naval. You just aren't going to be able to get a drop before getting shot down. There is a note I must make. Any bombs dropped from your centerline hardpoint and the bomb bay of the plane have a major delay between input and actual release. Play around with it and get a good feel for it before taking these bombs out into an actual match. For the playstyle of the D4Y1, it has a role in both air and ground battles, though it doesn't actually perform great in either. In air battles, you need to act as a support fighter. You have great performance, but the issue is that you don't actually have the means to kill anything. This really sucks, but you do what you can. As you have great performance in engine power, as well as a full bomber air spawn, use yourself as bait for enemies. It is very easy to trick 3 or 4 of the enemies that climbed up to attack you, a helpless little dive bomber. When they do, you can dogfight those suckers all the way down to the deck, bleeding their energy to the last drop and making them easy pickings for your teammates. This, while unrewarding in terms of in-game currency, can be very fun as it leads to a lot of good dogfights, very annoyed opponents, and a much better chance that your team will win in any given match. Feel free to take a few shots on your enemies as you're dogfighting them. It won't hurt them, but it will give you some well-earned assist points when your teammates take them out. For ground battles, you have a very limited bomb load, but you can go fast through the battlefield. Climb up relatively high, spot a target, rush towards them at high speeds with your 500 kg bomb with their name on it, and fly out as fast as you can before the AA can properly range you in. You'll likely only get 1 kill per run before returning to the base, but you can do so fairly safely. That's everything for the D4Y1. On to its older, up-engined brother, the D4Y2. The D4Y2 sits after the D4Y1 in the folder at battle rating 2.3 and rank 2 in the 4th line of the Japanese airtech tree. The engine is a direct upgrade to the D4Y1's, being the IT Atsuta 31, which has a very respectable 32% increase in power over the D4Y1, a massive increase for only a 0.3 battle rating difference. This is somewhat offset by the increased weight of the aircraft, but overall it still feels a good bit more powerful in-game. This engine does still sadly have the same tendency to burn itself up as the old one though. Ordnance load is rather interesting and introduces some new mechanics to the tech tree. The D4Y2 can carry 4 Type 3 No. 1 Model 28 Mark I rockets, 2 60kg Navy Type 97 No. 6 ground bombs, 1 250kg Navy Type No. 25 Model 2 bomb, 1 500kg Navy Type No. 50 Model 2 bomb, or 1 500kg No. Type 2 50 Model 1 GP SAP bomb. The 250kg, 500kg, and 500kg SAP bombs are just like the ones we talked about before. However, there are several new additions due to the upgraded engine allowing a greater ordnance capacity. The 60kg bombs are rather useless on their own, requiring direct hits on top of enemies to take them out. Don't expect to get too many kills with these bombs unless you're really accurate and more than a little bit lucky. The Type 3 No. 1 Model 28 Mark I rockets, my goodness is that a mouthful, are the first unguided rockets that you get in the tech tree. These are fairly small rockets with only 20 kilograms of explosive filler. Even on direct hits to tanks, they might not be able to take them out. Plus, the rocket aiming tree that Gaijin gives you is less than helpful. There are some decent guides out there if you want to start learning how to use these unguided rockets in War Thunder. However, I typically don't use them for ground combat. Instead, I use them for air combat. You see, these rockets are your only capable weaponry against bombers. You know how you were tempted by all those magnificent looking bombers that were below you in the D4Y1? Now, you have the actual means to shoot them down. A direct hit from these rockets will one-shot a bomber. While they are difficult to aim, the result is often worth the effort. Rockets also have a distance fuse which you can set before spawning in, which adjusts how far they'll fly before detonating. I usually set it to about 700 meters. Because of how small the rockets are, it's really only so useful on near miss, but it's better than nothing. The rockets also launch off in a left-left, right-right pattern, which is a little bit unusual for rockets, so be aware of that if you are used to playing with rockets already. Interesting part about the ordnance is that this plane actually has custom loadouts for bombs. This means that you can mix and match weaponry to a degree. However, you sadly cannot take either the rockets or the 60kg bombs if you're already taking a 500kg bomb, as that exceeds your plane's weight limits. You can actually take either of those smaller options in conjunction with the 250kg bombs, which does actually expand your plane's capabilities. For base bombing, a 250kg bomb and two 60kg bombs actually does about 5/6 of a base, which is greater than the 3/4 of a base done by just the 500kg bomb. So if you're really into hyper-optimizing your bomb loadout for maximum base damage, that loadout is your best bet. For the playstyle of the D4Y2, it has similar roles in ground and air as the D4Y1, with slight differences in air battles. In air battles, you still have the issue of not really being able to fight enemies. You can either go bomb a base with the loadout just described, or you now have the option which I normally take, the rockets. Climb up as per usual and find an unfortunate bomber who shall be your victim. Get right above them, dive down, and fire away. It takes a good bit of practice leading them, but eventually you'll be able to get a bomber every match or two like this. After that, enact the support role described for the D4Y1, tricking enemies to follow you and bleed their energy to become easy pickings for your team. In ground battles, nothing really changes. I wouldn't use the rockets, and bringing the 60kg bombs forces you to bring a 250kg bomb instead of a 500kg one, which just isn't worth it in my opinion. Just bring the 500kg bomb and speed through the battlefield to collect your one free kill. That is all the nuance to each of these planes, and that took far, far longer than intended. Let's blitz through the finances and modifications to wrap up the video. The D4Y1 costs 9,200 RP to research, 16,000 SL to purchase, and 4,500 SL to slot, bringing us up to a total of 20,500 SL to buy and slot. The repair cost of a fully upgraded D4Y1 is 843 SL in arcade battles and 1,286 SL in realistic battles. The D4Y2 costs 5,600 RP to research, 22,000 SL to purchase, and 6,300 SL to slot, bringing us up to a high total of 28,300 SL to buy and slot. The repair cost of a fully upgraded D4Y2 is 1,081 SL in arcade battles and 1,816 SL in realistic battles. For modifications on the D4Y1, start out with the radiator, compressor, and airframe. Then get the 500 kilogram bombs if you're going to use them, followed by the engine, wings repair, engine injection, and cover. Then get the rest of the performance and survivability mods. Finally, get all the guns and ammo belts as they're all but useless. Similarly for the D4Y2, start out with the rockets for bomber hunting, the radiator, compressor, and airframe. Then get the 60 kilogram bombs if you're farming bases, the engine, 500 kilogram bombs for the same, engine injection, and cover. Then get the rest of the performance and survivability mods. Finally, get all those useless guns and belts. That is a wrap on the D4Y1 and D4Y2. This is probably one of the longer videos I have made to date, so sorry about that. The D4Y2 specifically was my favorite propeller plane while playing the Japanese air tag tree for the first time, so I really liked it and felt like I had to do this video justice. However much I love it though, these planes are incredibly weak. They have some absolutely great flight performance, but are held back by their incredibly pathetic guns and low ordnance amounts. As such, that great flight performance is for naught, and these planes are little more than useless in most cases. I hope that you can still find some of the fun in them that I do though. I'd be honored to see you next time, where we'll be looking at the final float plane in the tree, a massive upgrade to the previous H6K4 and one of the most competent float plane bombers in the game, the H8K2. Whether you're there or not, I thank you for tuning in today.